everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today we're going to be going over essential brush strokes that beginners need to know. So these are the essential brush strokes that you are going to be using in almost all of your paintings for the first year that you're painting, right? So we're going to be going into the brush stroke basics. We're not going to be basic. So I got to say, I like a pumpkin spice latte, so if it's basic like that, then I'll absolutely be basic. Just it's pumpkin spice latte basic for sure. Where is there any pumpkin spice pushback? I've never understood that. But I do teach art. That's why you're here.
You do.
And I'm going to teach you to do this. So this is a course for beginners. This course is set up so that if you're really new to painting and you're wanting to learn how and you want to have more instruction and more knowledge that is focused to what beginners know and don't know, this course is part of that. We have just done techniques. Mm-hmm. So techniques are different than brush strokes. It's sort of interesting. Oh my gosh, I saw something so funny. So techniques are a little different than brush strokes. And sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference apart for those. So first, I just want to sit there and talk about how to correctly load the brush and how those brush strokes work off of the brush. Because there's some fundamental mechanics. Doesn't matter what the stroke is, doesn't matter what the brush is. Do we have the correct load, John?
Oh, yeah. Check about you want the lower?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. This one? Oh, wait. Put it in front of you. Whoosh, there you go. Put it there.
Okay. So every brush has several sides, right? You've got the front and the back, the corners and the edge. Even though this is round, it still has several sides all the way up into the belly. So as you're looking at a brush, the front, the back, the edge, and the corners. And then, of course, you should also count the back of the handle because you can use that to make marks as well. So no matter what the shape is, no matter what you've got going on, every brush stroke has a correct load. So if you're having trouble with a brush stroke, you may want to go into the techniques of how to load a brush, because if you mismatch the load to the brush stroke, you might not get a good result. So many of you are familiar with decorative toll painting, sometimes referred to as one-stroke painting. And if you have a really dry brush when you go to load it, like so say I'll kind of load my brush here on sort of a double stroke, right? But my brush is dry. That isn't quite the one-stroke effect that's familiar to us. But if my brush has a little moisture in it, right, we can get a little more fluid flow. You see more of the brush stroke that you're expecting. So your first thing that you're going to want to overcome is making sure that the stroke you're asking yourself to do has the correct load on the brush. And again, if you're having trouble loading the brush, take the techniques class. It's all chapter marks, so you can skip through and find what information that you're looking for and practice those brush loads, because you've got to get your brush loads correct to get the brush strokes off the ground. All right, now let's talk about how to find all the places on a brush that make a mark. Okay, I'll use this brush this time just to be cheeky. Front, back, corners, edge. I'm going to just load my brush. And I'm going to do the load we practiced. This is for a full load of paint into the brush. So I have a minute in my stroke, right? So there is the wide stroke on the front, a wide stroke on the back. Pretty simple. They come forward. The width of that stroke, if you notice, if I press really hard, that can widen the stroke a little bit. So pressure will impact your stroke. Load up again. Now, there's the edge of the brush. Pretty different, isn't it, the marks that those make? Not the same. And then there's the all-important corner. So sometimes you'll see, those are pretty small little dots, aren't they?
They are.
That's why sometimes in daily painting, we can use one brush for an entire painting. Sometimes when I'm challenging myself, I'll do that. I'll get a big brush like this and do a whole painting with that. So the important thing is to figure out how to make marks with the sides of your brushes. Let's do it real quick with a fan brush, just so we have the principle down. Okay, so I'm going to take a fan brush here. This is just a basic fan. And we're going to do the basic load, like pumpkin spice latte. That's how basic we are. And we're going to do a stroke up and a stroke down. Right. We're going to do an edge. Now, this is a hawk fan, so it's not as fine of a line, but it certainly is more fine than that. And we're going to make marks with the corners. Now, let's remember, back of our brush can make a mark too. I've used it more times than I care to think about in my time painting. So I know that's kind of going back to the beginning, but sometimes if you haven't used a brush, it can be really confusing, right? Angle brush, same thing, guys. Okay, so it's on an angle. It's maybe an unintuitive shape, but it's still on the wide. On the edge. On the corners. Well, there's all those places to make brush strokes. Now, I haven't curved any of these, which does alter the brush stroke, but I'm just trying to help you guys understand the fundamentals of loading your brush and understanding how that brush works out. All right. My 6 basic brush strokes. I want to tell you about those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell us about?
About all the different kinds of them. There's 6 basic brush strokes you're going to do in your first year of painting. Now, understand, you can do a technique with almost any brush stroke. Almost any technique can be almost any brush stroke. And almost any brush stroke could also be a technique, depending on how you utilize it. There are exceptions like paint pouring.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't really a brush stroke, but it is a technique. You know, spraying or splattering isn't really a brush stroke, but it is a technique. So sometimes we'll have a technique that isn't a brush stroke. But for the most part, they are harmonious. Let's do line, vertical, and horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to be able to make some lines. Let's get a round brush. I'll go into the red. So you've got to be able to make a brush stroke and a line, thin and thick. So you can see when I press hard, I get a thicker line. When I press lighter, I get a thinner line. I like to be able to make them down. I like to be able to stroke upwards to get them.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, in most of my brush strokes, I will push harder at the beginning of the stroke and release at the end. But you should be able to make an even line stroke all the way through any of your tools. Whatever brushes you have, especially if you're new, get your scratch paper out, practice making straight lines with all of them. I know it's kind of hard to even think about doing these practice things because you're like, well, my paint costs money and my materials cost money. In the long run, this will save you money because you won't be throwing things out from frustration. Let me come across and make them horizontally. Right? So lines, you can make them vertically. Both directions. You can see as the paint load goes lower, it's more of a dry brush. When the paint load is heavy, it's more of a full load. I could double load this brush. So the load, in some sense, is a clue to the technique that you're using. And then the direction of the stroke and the shape of the stroke is a clue to the stroke. All right, let's go on and do some curve strokes. A lot of curve strokes in art. Like, so many. I'm going to get the ever tricky angle brush. I'm going to load it up. You can do this with all your brushes. I'm going to show you a brush at a time. You guys go through all your brushes in your practice, okay? So, we've had straight strokes, but sometimes we need to curve a stroke. We need to be able to curve to the left and curve to the right. On the wide and on the line. Thick and thin. Every brush we have. Sometimes our curved strokes might come up. And then I'm going to do it on the line. Now, notice to do it on the line, what do I have to do for this shape brush? I have to twist the handle. Can you capture the twisting the handle in my hand?
Mm-hmm.
So when I want the kind of calligraphy line, I keep my handle steady in my hand, right? Edge up and down. You can see that little fold there.
Oh, yeah.
But when I want to turn the brush, I've got to turn it in my hand. So curved strokes. Every brush has a curved stroke in it. Every brush has a curved stroke in it. Some of them are ideal. Some of them are not ideal. It really depends. We're going to do our rounds. You can see these are like commas. Right? Sometimes these are like a little comma stroke.
Paisleys.
Right?
Isn't that what they're making paisleys out of, is those little comma-looking things?
Right? Sometimes you've got to be able to do curved strokes around things. See how we're doing? So it's important to be able to control the line of your brush. It's not as difficult to say calligraphy is, and I don't want to put like that into the world. If you want to learn calligraphy, it's highly learnable and it's fun and you can do it. And they're great classes. But there are more skills in calligraphy about getting a word out than even this. Oh, if you're already doing calligraphy, all those brush skills apply. Same. Crossover. Okay. The S stroke. All right. So the S stroke. This one gets everybody every year when I do acrylic April versions of the S stroke. The S stroke is kind of like what it sounds. It's a stroke that has two opposing curves, like an S. So I curve to the left and I curve to the right and I flick it out. These are kind of strokes that you might use in topics like hair, waves, water. There's a lot of times that you will need to be able to do an S stroke. Now, when you get a little further along, then you'll learn to like make these sort of little crazy strokes that are multi-compound lines. But right now, just try to get S strokes out of your brushes and see what those are like so they don't take you by surprise. So I can do an S stroke on the edge. See that? And then I can do an S stroke on the wide. Very different stroke, depending if it's on the edge of the brush or the corner of the brush. We're just whipping through these.
Yeah.
All right. The all-important leaf or tear stroke. This does like petals and leaves and all kinds of things. Actually, we use values to paint tears, but, mostly.
Yeah.
Right? Let's get into our yellow. I'm going to change my water. We're cooking through today.
Really are.
I'm going to get my round out. Again, you do this with all of your brushes. It's a lot harder to do the leaf stroke with a square because it doesn't really have that round shape. And we're going to talk about this. So this stroke lends itself to a filbert, which we've talked about in the brush video, or a round. And we'll start with the leaf. So the leaf starts thin, and then you put pressure, and then you relieve. And you should have like a little point. See there? Looks like a little leaf. A lot of daisies, a lot of flowers are painted with this. It's a leaf tear stroke. I'm telling you both names for it so that you know when you're out there in the world away from me. Not that you should ever go from me, but if you go from me, if you're out in the world away from me, I'll double load this so you can kind of see that. See? We're familiar with that for flowers, aren't we? Where we loosely mix the paint. I have found sometimes if you're having trouble, you can twist the brush to control the stroke. I'll show you again. See how that can help me kind of control the stroke? So you've got to be able to do that. And, we can do it with other brushes. They just don't maybe do it as well. So like if I come here and I press and release, it's still the teardrop stroke. It's about the pressure and the release. Now, if I do a teardrop on the 1/2-inch angle and then I match them up, we're pretty familiar with that. That's another kind of leaf shape. So you can match up these types of strokes. and get some nice effects. It's important to practice your brush strokes, right? With all your brushes. So you don't grab the wrong brush for a stroke that you want. Like, let's look at it with the big bright. So we can do the same. But look, guys, I paint it with the corner. So I couldn't do that. If I did that teardrop, it wouldn't make that teardrop.
Mm-hmm.
But if I come in at the corner and I press down and release, I can still get it on this brush. Something you just might not know. How do I get that stroke on a square brush? Beep. And I'm just double loading so you guys can see that the shape of the stroke. How are we loving it?
I think this is pretty awesome.
All right. Do you have any questions?
Let's see here. I've been watching you. I will scroll up. Everybody says hello. Filberts are my favorite. Where do I get the round brush? I have everything else.
So here's the deal on the brushes. What stock is left is left. And you can still find them at Jerry's and Dick Blick and I think King's, and the brush guys have them. These are open stock Art Sherpa red handle brushes. Michaels still has them online and you can use the 50% off coupon. If you go to the brush guys and you buy any brushes, you can use the Art Sherpa for 5% off. We were actually ones that instituted that first coupon. That's like, now it's a thing, but like 5% off for you. That's still true. We're never going to take that away.
I had a question, another question that's kind of interesting. So there was a question, can you make some suggestions for lefties? And let's see if I turn this off. Then I can say you have a left hand now. And you can show them left-handed techniques.
I am not a great demonstrator of left-handed techniques because it's my non-dominant hand.
I mirrored the image. So now you're left-handed.
Oh. Does that really help, though?
I don't know. But maybe. I'm willing to give it a try. Like,
if you're writing with a pencil, the strategies you use with your pencil and your pen will apply to your brush, if that's helpful.
I just thought I might make it left-handed for a moment for everyone to see.
No, that's a good idea. It was actually suggested. I asked my left-handed viewers about their experience. We're just doing some little curved comma strokes and some S strokes. There we go. On the left hand, it was suggested to watch right-handers in the mirror.
Just on
That way, if there's a directionality where being left-handed or left-hand dominant would be impactful. I'll tell you this. Here's a left-handed, right-handed device. I have found that many left-handed people have a easier time on the upward stroke over the downward stroke. And I think that's about the direction coming in and off the canvas. But here's what it is. I feel like I'm right-handed and I can still drag paint through my canvas. And, if I've got paint over here going from right to left, I can still drag paint. You can drag paint if you're coming from left to right to left, doesn't matter. I think that what happens is that everything is so biased to right-handedness that becomes normalized, but it's all completely normal. I mean, you guys know that, but it's just super normal. There's just not enough resources. But if you go to any of the websites that do like pencil holding skills, same skills for the brush.
All the left-handed people just went, yay! We're going to do this.
I just never got that. I remember being in school and they were like, Timmy is left-handed. I'm like,
all right, we're going to do more of that later.
How is that the thing?
We'll do a lefty mirror lesson later.
We're going to do a lefty mirror lesson later. We will do a lesson for that because, it's very normal. Just left-hand dominance. All right.
What's next?
Hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and dots.
Okay.
Got to be able to hatch, the cross-hatch, the stippling, and the dots. So what's a hatch?
What is a hatch? That sounds like a dude who lives
is a series of
in
lines
the country.
next to each other.
I'm hatch.
And in relation, we think of this sometimes in drawing, but it's actually a painting skill too. I'm hatching here. Look at me hatching away. Hatch, hatch, hatch. Kind of hear it in the sound. Hatch, hatch, hatch.
Hatch is the nickname for the kid who
I'm
carried
grab
around
some
his...
blue and coming across the hatch.
Hatchet.
Cross hatching.
Everyone agrees that that was a really cool left-handy thing.
Oh, cool. We will do more of that then. If you've got great left-handed suggestions, leave them in the comments. We will make videos about that. I believe inclusion is important and normalizing things that are intrinsically normal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why I liked all.
See, we're hatching. You can do that with any brush. You can hatch an angle brush. That's just cross hatching. Come back and cross hatch again. Cross hatch infinitely. An infinite cross hatch.
Ooh, I like this. So Grace uses a Lady Susan, and she's left-handed.
A Lady Susan.
Because her Susan isn't lazy
Not
at all.
lazy.
It's a Lady
Grace,
Susan.
I toast my coffee to you, Grace.
That's a clever name.
I like that. I like that.
It's a Lady Susan.
I'm with you, Grace. I'm with you there completely. I love that. Stippling.
Wait, to stipple?
To stipple.
We're still okay.
We are hatching, cross-hatching, stippling,
stipple.
and dots.
Okay. Oh, there's dots to come.
Okay, so first let's stipple though. We're going to use our brush. That's where you go up and down.
You can do that. Any brush?
Any brush.
Okay.
I mean, the fan is great for it, and we all know that's how we get our little tree and our bushes. But this is how we stipple it.
Now, you've got a brush video to talk about all the different variables.
All the different types of brushes and what brush strokes they kind of lean into. We'll go over it again a little bit at the end, just to remind you what brushes do what strokes easiest. But like I can come here with a bright and
it's a denser stipple.
I can still stipple though. I can come in and also use little kind of backward marks here. This is also kind of a stippled stroke. So that's a stippled stroke, and this is a little bit of a stippled stroke where we make the little dots and we interweave them. See how we're doing? Colors being next to each other. It's a little like pointillism in the way we think about it. And dots. So we've got to be able to make dots. Here's some thoughts on dots. I like to use my round. You can make dots with the back of the handle and the front of the brush. I find it's easiest to do with the round. I thin my paint. As you can see, I'm bringing water over and I'm thinning it to improve the fluidity. That's my heavy body paint. You might not have to do that with craft paint or fluid paint. And I just use the tip of the brush and I leave little dots. I'm getting really fine dots. I have a dotting tool.
That's a technical dotter.
It's a technical dotter, but that's what we're doing. You can physically paint, obviously, circles.
Now, if you didn't have a precision dotting instrument, could you use the blunt end of a stick?
You could use a blunt end of a stick. Let's get the blunt end of the stick.
Oh, yeah. See, it works.
This is why maybe I don't put tons of pressure on you to buy any particular tool. And don't forget, I'll use my cat's tongue number 10 here. Not my cat's tongue number 10, the Art Sherpa number 10, the Goldilocks. I can dot with the corner of my brush. You know, I might have to dot for reflection. I might dot for the center of a flower. I might dot to put a little bit of light in the eye. So all of your brushes can dot. The corners are where you dot, unless you've got a round. Oh my goodness. We're only down to like one.
Yeah?
One.
One?
One. And I'm going to scumble with a hog brush because it's really made for that, but you can scumble with any brush.
This is your last move?
This is my last move, the scumble.
This is your finishing move. Finish him!
All right. Yes, this is finishing move. I'm getting a little of my purple here.
Or it could be like
so
the
scumbling.
Twirl. Ooh.
is this sort of like little diffused act of rubbing paint out. You can scumble with a corner. Now, I like hog brushes the best for scumbling or stencil brushes, but you can technically scumble with any. So that's one of those techniques and a brush stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Technique and a brush stroke.
It seems
Woo-hoo!
like the worse the brush, the better the scumble.
The worse the brush, the better the scumble. It's pretty true. Now, a lot of people scumble till they break the heel. They'll scumble with a wand and they'll scumble so badly that they'll break the heel out and the brush will look like it's been electrocuted. And now it is a bush brush. I suggest that, you lighten your scumble when you do the stroke. I'll do it with the hog bristle here. Right, if I'm going to scumble with this.
Wait. I got to go down there and watch it. You're just, man.
See, I am scumbling.
My cameras are slow and old. They're like.
I am doing that brush stroke, but I'm not pressing down. A lot of people, they want to press down. Don't press down.
Don't do that. That looks scary.
Yeah, it will wear out your brush. You can do the scumble with a light touch too. You don't have to have a heavy touch.
Okay.
That's not true.
I actually had a little like, woo, don't do that.
Well, because you can break the heel.
You could see it too.
You can see it start to happen. All right. Let's come back and I'm going to show you how these concepts become things on your painting. Basic things that you really will probably be doing your first year of painting.
Using brush strokes to paint stuff.
You've got to use brush strokes to paint stuff.
That makes sense. That's what you're gonna do.
Right?
All right, let's see it.
So grass. Let's make some grass. I'm going to take some yellow and blue and make some
grass?
Traditional green. That's a very grass green, and we're going to load it. I'm going to go ahead and add my water, swirl around, and I'm rolling my brush to load it for the stroke. I'll come right here. And we're going to do some grass. So you can do straight lines. I find it's best to flick upwards on the straight line. And what that does is it allows the brush to sort of part and leave a little bit of a fine edge. Also, stroking heavier at the beginning of the stroke and releasing towards the end. Now, if I were to go like this, I would have hatching or lines, but not.
No, you mowed the lawn. It's just.
It looks a little bit like, kind of crew top. If you ever got there and realized you did it, you're just going to come back and fill it out.
Oh, it's just.
I'll fix it out. Okay?
All right.
Now, something I think helps grass a great deal is a little bit of curve to the stroke. I'm going to curve a little bit right. I'm going to curve a little bit left. Some of them will be longer. Some of them will be shorter. See how we're making nice little lovely grass?
Mm-hmm.
You want uneven edges along your grass. It is nice to have the weight of the stroke be at the beginning and the release at the end. I'm going to see if I can just slow-mo it and you can get in on it. So I come in at the beginning and flick. Speed does help the result and a lightness of pressure. Go the opposite way. Weave them in together. You can get grass with a lot of tools. I'll load up a synthetic fan here. So on the fan, you can get grass a couple of ways. You can get it on the wide. Oh wait, it was like the wide and edge thing from earlier ties into what we're doing now. But notice I'm still curving that stroke. Right? I'm doing kind of a nice curved stroke that's adding to the naturalness of what I'm doing. And people really like a fan. They're a fan for grass. Mm-hmm. And you can come on the edge for smaller, little more controlled. See how it does those kind of like little curved groupings? That's nice for pampas grass and stuff like that where you're trying to do the fronds.
And this is where it's neat, when you get these techniques and then you go out into the wilderness and you're like, oh, that's a roundy bush. I should use
You start to recognize, yeah.
And then that one's a more sticky bush and I need to use this. And then You're like, oh yeah. I'm doing that with clouds right now, like in my imagination.
There we go. So we'll do some light colors so you can kind of see it going on.
I'm an
That's a little grass.
imaginary.
The other thing that I can do is kind of like little short. See how that creates a nice short grass? So if I were trying to create maybe more mowed areas of grass,
Mm-hmm.
kind of tiling and layering these together. Mowed grass, wild grass, brush stroke. All your brushes will do it. Your angle brush, pretty good grass. Now it's interesting on the angle brush because I start the stroke with the short end of the brush
Mm-hmm.
and end it with the long.
Oh, I like those. Those
Most
are
of it lives on the
sophisticated.
edge. See how it mostly lives on the edge? Living on the edge. Gives me lots of nice long, delicate blades of grass. Look at those long, delicate blades of grass,
Has to say, those are very. I like those a lot.
right? And we can also still do the edge. This is the edge as well. There we go. Grass, grass, grass. Now we're grassing.
It's awesome.
Grass, 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 grass. Things we've got to be able to paint. Ooh, one of my favorites. You ready for fan brush tree?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fan brush tree.
So I'm going to start with a little bit of green. Quite a dark green. I might even get a little black into my green. So it's such a dark green, John.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I've loaded my brush up. You can see the load. When I'm doing a fan brush tree, I'm doing a stipple stroke.
Okay.
If the handle is up, the branches will be up, and if the handle is down, the branches will be down. And if the handle is straight, everything kind of doesn't have a particular curve. So I might start on that corner, tapping up and down. That's a nice top of a tree, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then very light pressure stippling up and down on the middle. Coming down, I will widen out. And if I curve that handle up, you can kind of see how there's a bit of a curve up to these branches, huh?
Oh yeah.
Coming down. The tree becomes wider at the bottom. You can stipple up to make sure the center feels very centered. We'll rinse out, wipe off, and maybe get some nice green highlight that could be there. Just for contrast. Same thing.
Oh yeah.
Now, with very little work, I have quite a lot of dimensionality in that tree.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be a little non-traditional here. Take a little of my blue and red, kind of a dark color. I'll move over a bit so we've got room.
Whoop.
Come to the top again. Right, maybe a little bit of corner painting to give dimensionality. Now, if I brush down,
Ooh, that's nice.
that's how the downward tree looks. Bushes, trees, hills, grass. And change water again. Changing water often. Lots of water to let settle today. All right, let's get some white. We'll load some pink into it. Add that highlight. Handle down. That's how those branches are that. They go down. So that's why sometimes there's weird little things in people's trees then throw them off. When they're getting the stipple, maybe they've got the fan brush, they got the correct fan brush, they've got the right paint, they have the right surface, they've stippled, and then they're like, man, my tree does not look like that tree. Well, there's a big difference between these two trees.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same tree.
They are not the same tree.
They are not the same tree. You know what we've got to do next?
I do.
Branches. Oh, the branches. Branches are lines and curves and S strokes, essentially.
A combination.
Combination. I'm going to load up my block here with my round brush.
But this is where that forking question comes in.
Right. So many of you, I will see, get a nice beginning on the branch. A branch stroke generally heavier at the beginning and it lightens out, right? Whoa, that's kind of like a beginning of a little branch. You can do your branches on an upward or downward stroke. But then people want to kind of branch the tree out and they do this. And they're like, that doesn't quite look like the branch I'm looking for.
Right.
You don't, in general, this is not an absolute rule. It just will help you want to fork your separations of branches. They go out from the same node. What you're going to want to do is a couple different styles. One style that I like is, I'm going to make a nice branch. Probably have to get some more water in there so it's fluid off my brush. You will want the load correct. Fluid off your brush. A nice branch, right? There's a curve. And curve. Oh, that one's too heavy. So what I did wrong there is I pressed too hard on the stroke and the branch got too thick. Now I can either come back and reduce it or thicken the branch it's attached to. But it's those little curved out, and it kind of works for antlers too. Right? Pretty familiar little thing. The other one that is nice is I kind of really love is the crookedy. And the brush stroke kind of does a lot of compound little movements, making lines that are all crookedy. I love me a crookedy brush stroke. Can even make this little branch here crookedier. I made it more of it. So a little more like veins or things like that. Those are the kind of two concepts. Obviously, there are a lot of trees. And they may have different branches that are exceptions to this. But just understanding that you're doing one of these things in your traditional trees will help you get a more natural looking tree and get you out of this. If for some reason you have done this, I suggest that you kind of break it up visually. See? Broke it up visually. So nice. It's not a fork. The branches. Dry brushing wood or rocks or patinas. Dry brushing. Ooh. Dry brushing. All right. So when I'm painting wood, and I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of black to start, and I'm going to use a hog brush here just to show you. I'm going to paint a little area. It's going to be the wood. We're going to start with a dark color.
And this is where you could use a scumble.
Yeah, you could use a scumble, but now the direction of your brush stroke is going to matter because that's the direction that the wood grain is going. Right? So you're going to need to have, a bit of brush directionality to get a good wood grain. Going to make a nice little brown here for our wood grain. Ooh, getting into a nice brown. All right, I have to dry this. In this is a technique and a stroke. You're going to want to have this be very dry so you can do the next layer.
Okay. Oh, she's just going to do a quick dry. As you can see, that's you've not heard. We have a don't use heat uh, like thing we talk about when we're doing hair drying because it can affect how things work. So you can watch our paint video on that to learn more.
Yay!
Okay.
All right, let's add our brown brush stroke. I've loaded on the edge. It's a dry brush.
It is a dry brush.
It also tends to be a very linear stroke. So you're creating areas that are more defined in that stroke and little divisions, whether it's the grain of a tree or the planks in a deck. Right? That's how I use a dry brush to kind of start to build wood stroke. Wood. Right? You can do this really well with a fan brush too.
Mm-hmm.
Fan brush makes the knots and everything in the wood much easier to accomplish.
Oh, okay.
Right? Using short little hatching strokes. That also helps define the wood, doesn't it? A little more white in there. My pressure is very light. You know. And then I can even come in using my round brush and, line strokes.
Mm-hmm.
Define these as maybe perhaps planks. Just a basic thing you're going to come across. Might make a little bit of a knot. Do some curve strokes. Even kind of create some grain in some wood.
Oh, wow. It's
so
grain.
Little grain. So now the strokes come together and they make something. Let's come back and I'm going to show you a lavender flower.
Okay. And lavender.
Lavender. Lavender. All right. And maybe we'll make some purple so it's somewhat lavender.
Yay! We're a fan of purple here.
We like purple. The most imaginary of all colors. I'll start with the dark purple and I'm going to use my angle brush and I'll use my round brush. So in there, in lavender, you would be kind of using a bit of that tear. Sometimes I call it the touch pull stroke. Right? To build that spike flower. See how we're weaving it in?
Mm-hmm.
Get a nice little, very light lavender go on top of that. And that's with a...
Oh, man. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't go down quite as far. Let's try that again.
That's a nice flower.
It is.
What do you want me to try again?
Do that one more time.
The flower?
Yeah.
All right, I'll do another one, but I was
'Cause I
about to
think
do
it
a stem and a leaf.
It just disappeared right off this. There we go. I want to do that a little better.
Okay,
Oh,
so there's
wow.
a stem, and I can pull in some leaves using that teardrop.
Yeah.
Loosely mixed paint lets me get some dimensionality. Okay. We can do it. We can do another flower. I don't mind. I do not mind. Let's do this one more with blue. Come in with some blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do it with my round brush. We'll put a little stem coming off here.
Perfect.
Now you can see that the angle brush had a slightly different shape to its tear. Bend this over as it comes down to tuck it behind its friend, maybe.
Mm.
All right. Come back in a little bit of white. Can even get into this purple to create some dimensionality in the flowers. We do a lot of these flowers. These are a lot. Little pulls. You can do them with the corner of a brush. You could do them with your angle. Yeah, I could tuck it in. See, I'm bringing a little spike there.
Yeah.
But it's still that same. Just that touch and pull. Weaving those together. Just creates little bunches of flowers. It's a bunch of flowers. Did you know how to make those bunches of flowers? That's how you make them.
I think those are
beautiful. You can
beautiful.
do that with any brush. It gets a little messy with a fan.
Yeah.
You could do it, but it would be very strange. But you could do it. All brushes kind of do most strokes, so you could do it.
Yeah.
All right, let me get back into my docs. Okay, the bowl flower. You guys are kind of familiar with the bowl flower. You kind of see it a lot in like poppies.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and take a little red. I'll mix a little red into it. I mean, a little yellow into it to warm it up. Get into that poppy red area. All right. So when we're doing a bowl flower, whether we're doing it with a big brush, we'll do it with a big brush. All right. We're going to kind of pull the brush on the wide, huh? Maybe have this little back petal be a little darker. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to do curve stroke. Maybe come here on the narrow and do a curve stroke. Come forward and also a curve stroke. So I've created a little bit of a bowl. All right. I'm going to get a little white into it so you can kind of see it. See how there's a bowl?
Mm-hmm.
We're just using little curved strokes and layering them up to build the flower. Put a little center in there peeking out. Poppy has a little center. It's just peeking out. It's saying, oh, I could be a poppy. Did you know?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know I was a poppy?
It's looking very poppy-ish.
Now maybe I want to give it a thicker stem at the base. You can see I use the corner of my brush. And then I can use long line strokes to kind of create a little bit of grass here. See how we're doing?
That's pretty amazing.
Fine lines. Now it's very poppy-ish. You'll run into a lot of these. You're kind of like 5 flowers. Sometimes you'll have to do like 3. And they're a little, they are a little messy. Where you put the center kind of shows you the direction of the flower. And it's about capturing that overall shape. You can do it with a round brush. You can do it with your big square brushes. If I can do a big square one. Maybe this one will have a little petal coming out. Just put a little black in the center. Quick little flower that you can get.
Wow.
So it's just something to know about, especially when you're learning to paint these things. They're the entry. It's not that flowers don't get more complicated as you go. They absolutely do. And you will love it as you go. Right? You know, adding highlights to the flower gives it dimensionality. Adding leaves to the flower gives it dimensionality. All right. All right. And this is just a bowl flower. It's not a bowl flower rose. It's just a bowl flower.
Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Sorry.
My mistake. It was actually my mistake.
Oh.
And I typoed the title. It was me. This is not John. It was me. But I just didn't want you guys not to know. Because roses have a bit of a bowl to them. Peonies have a bit of a bowl to them. But they also have some other things that are kind of in their nature. And we're going to talk about the basic rose that you might paint.
Here's what I'll say is we've been married long enough that we can make our mistakes together.
It's true.
Are we on to the next one?
We're on to a rose. We're going to use our round brush. You can do this with any brush as well.
Okay,
But
wait. So the bowl flower and the rose
are separate flowers.
But we
only have one title for it?
We only have one timestamp. So we're going to say.
All right. So it's there. All right. Bowl flower and a rose. Let's do them together. Okay. So let's come here and do the rose. So I'll flip this over a little bit.
Do you need more papers?
I will get more papers in a second, but I can fill this one up for a minute.
Okay.
And we're going to start with a bit of a dark color. The thing about a rose is that you've got to have shadow in the center and in between the petals. And we're going to do comma curve strokes that are going to interlace around each other. They are smaller towards the center and they become larger as they go out. Again, it's a basic kind of little rose that we're going to do. I do want it to be painted. The paint can be open and dry brush like this if there's something underneath. That's fine. Now I'm going to get some white, my yellow, and add a little bit of a highlight there. I'm just highlighting the petals. This is my simplest, simple rose. I always teach it to beginners. When you guys have this down, this concept of the way the petals layer, you can come back and do more complicated roses. There we're done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to maybe do a loosely mixed yellow and red here. Just for fun. Curving strokes. Pressing down and releasing. Those are the brush strokes that we're mastering, that we're doing that with. I'm back with the light color. This really is the foundation of many, many wonderful, wonderful flowers. Once you get this basic process down, then we can start showing you like smudge and how to catch a double load to make a leaf and smudge that in and have some leaves that fall out, right? Okay. Did we have a daisy in there?
We do.
I love my daisy. The daisy flower. Daisy flower is a fun flower. I will do my daisy here, and I'll do my daisy in. Let's make it like a Cosmo and like a purple one. All right, we'll do kind of like a mildly purple daisy. There we go. I like that. Some water in there so there's nice flow. This is very much going to be like the tear or the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to come here and I'm going to pull a nice little stroke in on a curve. This will be my longer petal. I'm going to come, and this one maybe is a little shorter because this one's a little bit hidden. And I'm going to meet them all. They're going to join kind of together. And I'm twisting as I go. Can you see the twist?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit longer there.
Very nice.
I might come in and add a little highlight to that. Now it's kind of like a little starfish. If I come in the center, and I made a little daisy. You can make daisy flowers big. You can make daisy flowers small.
You can make daisy flowers all day long.
You really can. They can be little tiny daisies.
Oh, wait. Your
Sometimes
daisy's wondering.
all the petals face you, right? And that little space is in the center. A little bit wetter than I'd like. Like this one. There we go. Come back and fix that petal. You can come back and repair petals, make them work. So you get where the center of the flower is the angle that its face is pointed. So if the face is to one side or the other specifically, then the flower will seem like it's facing that direction. If it's all evenly facing you, that's what it will do. You decide where the flower faces. This is just a big one, which is why I'm giving you guys
a little space.
Yeah, just a little more to see that. I mostly do these with my round. I can do them with a filbert. Sometimes it's nice to do little color highlights in them. There we go. Get a little flower in. You can make them darker in the center and lightening up as they go out. As well as an option.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're painting them, that's kind of how we get those basic little strokes going on. And then I'll just show you one last with the bright brush. We can do like leaves and grass also with this, and also flowers. So I can do quite large flowers if I wanted to with this. You can see just imply greenery. So just using that corner, pulling through. I know that's a crazy mess of things that you've learned, but you know, hey.
I think that worked.
Kind of turn it over. I think we found some spots. And you can also curve, if you curve the daisy, I just said one last thing.
Okay.
So if the daisy's petals are curved like this, they'll feel like they're down. If you curve them like this, it'll seem like the daisy's bowl is curved up.
That seems nice.
Right. So when I change the direction of the curve of that stroke, it can change the direction that the flower, it feels like that flower is going.
Neat.
So the curve of that stroke does impact your flower. Okay. Guess what?
What?
The last part.
The last part? What's the last part?
Isn't it so long, folks? And then I tell them, okay.
You could have it any way you like it because you're in charge.
All right. And this is where I'm going to tell you what is the best strokes for what brush.
Okay.
Especially for this beginner acrylic class. Okay. Now, trees, stippling, bushes, fans are amazing for those types of objects. They're also really good for highlights on water. Any place you need a little splattering, they do a great stipple texture and they do a great upward stroke texture. The brush does everything fairly well because of all of its sides. It only starts to struggle when you got to go in a nice, perfect little circle. It's true, this does great backgrounds and it fills in large, smooth areas. But as you can see, it's capable of doing any of these. I would just use it when I was doing bigger flowers or bigger plants, or like when I'm wanting to make something seem more substantial. My round does everything. I think if I were going to dry brush, I would, in my set, I would keep it in the set for this class, I would keep it to the angle, and these three, it's a little tough to dry brush with the round. It's a little fussy. You can do it. My little trick there is I tend to pinch it. So that when I'm dry brushing with it,
Oh,
I get a better result.
I can see it.
You can pinch your brush. Touch pull strokes, teardrop strokes, and all of that. I think that in our set, this grouping does those the best. Round giving you the most control on the curve of it, or the rows, or any of that. But you can actually do it with almost any brush.
Yeah.
If you are doing a lot of dry brushing, a lot of texture, I do recommend you get a hog in your set. Okay? But really, the point of this, and what I'm hoping you're taking away, is that you can do almost any brush stroke with any brush as long as you understand the parts of your brush that you can paint and the marks that they make at that basic first level.
Huh.
If you understand this, then you've got this.
Now, this is a pretty good one. We got all the way through this.
We got all the way through this, and it wasn't quite as intense as Techniques was yesterday.
But
Techniques was like, woo!
But what if we want more?
If you would like more, we're going to be meeting over at Facebook for live Q&A. This is a very informal Q&A, just in case, because we're doing these live right now and I'm not in the chat, just in case I'm missing questions or there's something that you want to see. If you're here on replay and you can't make this live stream or the live Q&A over on Facebook, put a question in the comments below. I read them. And as long as there's a reasonable answer that I can give, I'm going to give it.
Yep.
If I don't know something, I will find it out for you because it has very informed friends. I'd love to invite you to take the whole beginner art course, but maybe you were just here to understand your brush a little bit better, which I'm sure you do now. I'm sure you're like, oh,
I have a question.
I get how that all goes.
What if I wanted to learn about color mixing?
You would be seeing me this Saturday or on the replay. If you're here on the replay, just go to color mixing next. If you are here during the course, you're going to want to join us Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern for color mixing. Now, this is primary color mixing. And we are using a set of primaries to do it. However, this would work if you had any 3 primaries. The concepts of it, much like this brushstroke concept, will work with what you have. This will work with what you have, and it will teach you how to use what you have better.
Okay. Will you do me a favor? When we go over to Facebook, will you answer Lady Jolina's question of how do you do maple leaves?
I will have to look up a picture of a maple leaf off the top of my head, but I do basically know it. I painted a few.
We have a couple links too, but we're going to answer that question for you over there.
On Facebook.
On Facebook right now.
Now. I'll paint you a maple leaf.
We got coffee. Be realistic.
There's like the 3-prong and the 5-prong maple leaf, so we'll figure out maple leaf we want.
We can address, but see, this is what that after show's for, is for us to wax philosophical
about
about
leaves. And I have videos
leaves.
on maple leaves in watercolor and acrylic, if you didn't know. Like where we just specifically paint.
You do. You get specific.
Floating on water, turning into the fall joy that they are. I'm such a weird person. You have no idea.
Little drops of water.
Little drops of water on them.
They're all reflections. Yeah, we're deep in the...
Come join us. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button, guys. If you find this video after, like a year later after we've done it, and we haven't done the next year one, leave a comment. I'm going to answer. I check my comments all the time. I'm here to answer questions. You can always write support@theartsherpa.com. You can send pictures and stuff there, which is really helpful. You can come into the Facebook group and ask questions. If you're doing my tutorials, it's for the tutorials, so that would be its like caveat. But if you needed a question about a tutorial or a technique about a tutorial answered, that would be a good place to come. If you're on Facebook, you can actually post pictures and comments. So let's go over to Facebook. You guys keep practicing. Practice. We have one more practice painting technique, the color mixing, before we begin actually painting our 10 first paintings that every beginner needs to do.
Yeah.
All right. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. I'm going to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.